Hi, I'm Milas. After graduation, I came home thinking I'd rest, regroup, maybe be welcomed back into the space I helped hold together. But the only thing waiting for me was a rolled-up mattress under the stairs. And silence. My parents gave my room to my sister, said she needed more space. No one asked me. Then I found my sketchbooks in trash bags. My college laptop wiped clean. They didn't scream at me. They didn't kick me out. They just slowly erased me. So I moved next door and built a pool. But want to know what they did after that? Because the worst part wasn't sleeping on the floor. It's what they said when I was finally gone. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same. White trim, blue shutters, flower pots Vera replaced every spring like clockwork. But something in me knew it wasn't. Not anymore. I sat in the car a minute longer than I needed to. Let the AC run while the engine idled, just long enough for the silence to tell me what words wouldn't. The front door opened. Vera didn't wave. She didn't come running like mothers do in those videos where kids surprise them after graduation. She just stood there, arms crossed over an apron she probably hadn't taken off since breakfast, and said, "You're here. Good." I grabbed my duffel and walked up the steps. Roland was behind her, holding a cup of coffee, eyes fixed on the TV behind me, instead of his daughter returning with a degree. No one asked how the ceremony went. No one said congratulations. Vera turned and walked inside before I even reached the door. Inside, the air was cool but sharp. The smell of lemon cleaner still lingered in the hallway. Familiar but sterile. My body knew every corner of this house, but that day, it didn't feel like mine anymore. She led me past the living room, where Callista's books were spread out like she'd claimed the entire surface as a library annex, and gestured toward the stair alcove. There, beneath the stairs, was a mattress. Thin, rolled up in a faded plaid sheet I hadn't seen since high school sleepovers. A pillow sat on top like a punctuation mark to whatever sentence this was supposed to be. "This will be your spot for now," Vera said without blinking. "Callista's LSAT prep needs full focus." I didn't say a word. Roland cleared his throat behind me, then muttered, "It's temporary. You know how your sister needs structure." I nodded once, said nothing. That night, while they sat at the dinner table talking about law school rankings, I lay on the floor. It was colder than I remembered. Not the tile, the treatment. The way I'd been downgraded from daughter to houseguest in the span of one sentence. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I knew this house rewarded silence and punished the opposite. The next morning, I heard laughter from down the hall. I followed the sound, walked past the stairwell, and stopped outside what used to be my room. The door was wide open, new lighting, whiteboard on the wall, acrylic desk with gold legs, a corkboard pinned with motivational quotes. Callista stood beside Vera, both beaming as they posed for photos. The caption went up within minutes. "Proud to support our future lawyer, Sheeter Girlboss Callista." I stood in the hallway, unseen, while they celebrated the transfer of ownership like it was a real estate deal. Callista caught a glimpse of me in the reflection of the mirror and turned slightly. "I've needed this space for years," she said. "It's nice to finally have room to breathe." Vera laughed, adjusting a frame on the wall. "You deserve it, honey. You've worked so hard. The other one can sleep anywhere. The other one, not even my name, like I was a line item that had been quietly deleted." That night, I waited until the house had gone quiet before tiptoeing to the kitchen. I found a paper plate of cold spaghetti left on the counter. No note. No apology for forgetting I hadn't eaten. I sat alone, across from the TV Roland had left on mute. He always did that. Turned the sound down instead of turning the conversation up. Vera walked in briefly to refill her water. "We'll need you to keep things tidy while you figure out your next move," she said, as if I'd walked in off the street and asked for temporary shelter. On my way back to the mattress, I noticed my old World's Best Daughter mug holding a handful of spatulas in Callista's new room. I lay down, pulled the blanket over me, stared at the ceiling. Above me, her Spotify playlist played through the wall like a victory anthem. My spine ached, not from the floor, but from how deeply I had allowed them to see me as low maintenance. By morning, my back had molded to the floor's shape, every muscle stiff like I'd slept on concrete. I shuffled toward the kitchen, trying not to wake anyone, though part of me hoped I would. Let them see me stepping over my own dignity. The coffee machine groaned louder than usual. I reached for a mug, but the cabinet was nearly empty. I grabbed a chipped one with a faded cartoon owl, Callista's old study buddy cup. Ironic. As the pot dripped, I leaned against the counter and glanced up at the family calendar Vera kept taped to the fridge. She loved planning. Color-coded markers, cute stickers, every birthday, dentist appointment, HOA meeting labeled and circled. July stared back at me. Roland, July 3rd. The cat, July 12th. Callista, August 2nd. But somehow still had a giant gold star. My name wasn't there. I checked again, like I'd missed it somehow. I hadn't. Vera walked in wearing the same bathrobe she'd had since I was in high school, flipping through mail. I kept my tone even. Did we change calendars? She didn't even glance up. Oh, I guess I forgot to add yours. You're an adult now, right? I didn't respond, just turned back to the coffee, pretending I hadn't heard what I'd heard. But my birthday wasn't something you forgot. It was something you erased. Later that evening, after dinner, which I cooked, by the way, I curled up in my corner beneath the stairs with my laptop. I scrolled social media while the house fell quiet. Notifications lit up the screen, mostly ads, and a few congratulatory comments for Callista's latest mock LSAT score. Then I saw it. A Christmas post from Vera. The picture had been taken last year, in the living room. We were all there, me on the edge of the couch, Roland holding the cat, Callista in the center. I remembered that day. I had worn a sweater I thought Vera would like. The caption read, "Grateful for family, just us three." I checked the tags. Roland. Callista. No, Mylis. The comments made my throat tighten. Beautiful family, just three of you now? And below that, a heart emoji from Vera. Not a correction, not a clarification, just a quiet nod. My face was still in the photo, but I had been digitally erased, the way people crop out X's in old memories. It wasn't grief, it wasn't resentment, it was strategy. The next day, the weather turned warm enough to open windows. I sat on the porch step just after dusk, sipping cold tea. Across the fence, Vera's voice floated through the hedges as she chatted with our neighbor, Mrs. Hartley. "Callista's doing amazing. It's her time to shine now," Vera said brightly. "Maylis? She's still finding herself." I froze. Mrs. Hartley replied, with that uncomfortable hum people make when they don't know what else to say. You could hear the shift in energy like someone dimmed a light. "They didn't forget me," I whispered to myself. "They chose not to see me, and in doing that, they made sure everyone else stopped seeing me too." Back inside, the house smelled like leftover pasta and lemon cleaner. No one spoke to me that evening. Callista was on FaceTime in her room. Vera folded towels in silence. Roland watched a documentary in the den, volume just loud enough to pretend he didn't hear anything else. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to grab my charger. On the counter sat a cake box from that bakery Callista liked, the kind with gold ribbon and a wax seal on the front. Written on the box, in Vera's handwriting, "To Clarissa, our star." I stood there for a long time. My birthday was in 5 days. Nobody said a word. I didn't touch the cake box, just stared at it long enough to memorize the handwriting. Vera had taken her time on the lettering. Neat, slanted, almost proud. Like she was etching her approval into sugar and frosting. I slipped my charger into my bag and walked out without saying anything. The air outside was heavy, thick with early summer heat, and everything I hadn't said. The next morning was a Sunday, quiet in the way that used to feel peaceful. Now it just echoed. I walked into the kitchen again, hoping for coffee, and maybe silence that didn't hurt. Roland was in his usual spot on the couch, half watching a golf tournament. half dozing with the remote balanced on his stomach. I lingered by the sink before finally asking, "Dad, do you think I'll get back on my feet soon?" He blinked at the TV, didn't look my way. "Things have a way of working out, kiddo. You just gotta ride the wave." I waited. Nothing else came. No, "You've got this." No, "We're proud of you." Not even a glance. He didn't throw me out, but he also didn't ask me to stay. After lunch, I stepped out the side door to shake off the weight in my chest. That side yard had always been a place where forgotten things collected: old planters, broken pool toys, busted folding chairs. This time, it was my turn. Near the garbage bin sat a box, medium-sized, worn, marked in black Sharpie like something out of a yard sale. My Ellis. Old books, art junk. At first, I thought maybe it was something Vera had pulled from the attic, something she'd meant to donate and forgot. But the handwriting was recent. Clean, fresh ink. I knelt down and peeled the top open. Sketchbooks from college, including my final portfolio. The small lava lamp I'd used in my dorm. And a birthday card, still sealed, from Aunt Narita. I knew that envelope. She always used the ones with the floral print borders. The weight of it all hit slower than I expected. No rage, just realization. They were packing up pieces of my life like it was clutter. Expired inventory that no longer served their aesthetic. I left the box where it was. Back inside, I walked past Callista's room. The door was half open, her voice floating out as she practiced an opening statement into her phone like some faux courtroom. On the door, a custom nameplate read, "Callista R. Simmons, Future JD." Someone had printed it and laminated it. Vera's touch, no doubt. I kept walking, eyes straight ahead, heading back toward my corner under the stairs. Vera was coming from the laundry room, arms full of sheets. She stopped just long enough to say, "Can you keep the stair area clear today? It's getting a little cramped when the laundry's out." She said it without malice. No snide tone. Just casual, like asking someone to move their shoes. I nodded. Didn't argue. Just filed it away. That night, I pulled out my sketchbook, the one they hadn't found yet, and opened to a blank page. I didn't draw, didn't plan. I wrote one line in pen, so firm it bled through to the next sheet. She chose Callista. Dad let her. Then I closed the book and turned off the light. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still, quiet in that eerie way right before something cracks. I gathered my things to head out for a coffee, not because I needed the caffeine, but because I needed a reason to be somewhere else. The library was a 15-minute walk. I liked passing the bakery on the corner, the one that smelled like sugar and memory. Callista used to beg for their cinnamon rolls when we were kids. Now she just ordered protein bars online. I stopped by the coffee shop across the street, ordered a black drip, and tapped my card against the reader. Declined. I tried again, slower. Like that would change the outcome. Declined. "Want to try another?" the barista asked politely, but loud enough for the woman behind me to hear. I fumbled for my phone, logged into my banking app. The screen took longer than usual to load. Then it showed the message that burned through my chest. Account closed by Guardian. It was the same account Vera had helped me open in high school. She'd called it my safety net, said it was there for emergencies, for the unexpected. I guess I didn't realize I had become the emergency. I left the coffee on the counter, walked outside with nothing but questions in my hands. That afternoon, Vera announced we were having a family talk after dinner. She even made lemonade and brought out the good cookies, the ones from the bakery she only used for holidays and Callista's achievements. We sat around the table like strangers playing house. Roland flipped his phone screen down, a silent declaration that he wouldn't be helpful. Callista had a highlighter in her hand, underlining something on a law prep sheet like the rest of us weren't there. Vera leaned back, crossed her legs, and smiled. "So, I know we've had a bit of a rough patch, but I'd really like us to keep things light. Callista's mock scores came in, top 5%. Isn't that amazing?" I looked down at the table. My hands were steady, but my voice had to fight through a layer of disbelief. "You closed my bank account," I said flatly. Vera didn't flinch. "It was under my name. It wasn't a forever thing." "You didn't even tell me," I replied. She sipped her lemonade. "Let's not bring that energy here. We're trying to keep this house positive." Positive. That word. Like my frustration was a toxin, like I was something they had to scrub clean to keep the vibe right. Roland didn't say a word, just folded a napkin into smaller and smaller squares. Callista smiled behind her glass. "Maybe this is your sign to finally start something on your own." I stared at her, at them. This wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. Later that night, I climbed the stairs slowly, past the closed door that used to be mine. A sign now hung outside. Callista's study zone, do not disturb. It was laminated. I kept walking. Back at the bottom of the stairs, I sat on the floor and opened my sketch pad again. No doodles this time, no poetic lines. Just the truth. When you're labeled a problem for pointing out pain, you learn to stop sharing. And maybe that's what they wanted all along. Not to help me heal, but to make sure I stayed quiet enough not to embarrass them. I pulled out my laptop, opened a blank spreadsheet, and titled it, Steps to Independence, Phase 1. I started with what I had, listed my shifts at the diner, my design clients, my savings, what little remained. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew it wouldn't have their names on it. The days blurred after that. Between shifts at the diner and late nights sorting design files, I barely had time to breathe, much less feel. But something had shifted inside me. I wasn't waiting for their permission anymore. I was building something that didn't require it. That Wednesday, I came home early from a client consult. They'd needed help visualizing a new brand for their gardening service, and for the first time in weeks, I'd left a meeting feeling seen, valued. Like what I made had weight. The sun was still out, casting sharp lines through the side hallway as I stepped through the laundry door. I almost didn't notice it at first, the black trash bag tucked beside the washer. Ordinary, out of place only because it had my name written on it in thick marker. Mayless. Old clothes, art stuff. I froze. For a second, I told myself it must be a mix-up. Maybe Vera had boxed something for donation and grabbed the wrong bag. But the handwriting was hers. Sharp, tidy, deliberate. I knelt and opened it. On top, my senior portfolio, still bound in the blue folder I had used for my final critique. Below it, my high school art medals. Not many, but they had once meant something. At the bottom, a bent envelope. The card Nerida had given me last birthday, still sealed. I'd kept it tucked away for when I needed a reminder that someone in this family still saw me. And now it sat in a bag meant for the curb. I stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment before walking in. Vera was at the sink, rinsing strawberries. Callista sat at the island scrolling on her phone. "Who moved my things?" I asked. Vera didn't look up. "We needed to make space. You hadn't touched those in years." Callista chuckled softly. "I thought that lava lamp died back in college." I didn't respond. I didn't give them the pleasure of reaction. But I saw it clearly now. They weren't throwing me out in one dramatic act. They were dismantling me quietly, one object at a time. That evening, I passed by the dining table as Vera sorted through envelopes. A cousin's wedding was coming up. I paused to glance at the stack, white with gold trim, classic. One caught my eye. The ink looked smeared. I reached for it. My name had been written, then crossed out. Below it, in cleaner ink, Callista. "That was mine," I said, holding up the envelope. "You're not going, are you?" Vera asked. "Callista's representing the family." Callista didn't even look up. "It's more my crowd anyway." I stared at the paper. It wasn't just an oversight. It was a reassignment. Like my spot in the family was transferable. Optional. I walked out without another word. Later that night, I sat on the porch. The air was thick with June heat and the hum of mosquitoes near the screen. I opened my laptop and typed slowly, methodically. Exit strategy. Independent within 90 days. I listed every shift I could pick up, every freelance contact I hadn't yet reached out to. I wrote down my weekly grocery budget, canceled every subscription that wasn't a necessity. Then I printed it, folded the sheet once, wrote in all caps across the top. This time, they don't decide. I went to bed just before midnight. As I passed the back door, I glanced at the laundry corner again. The trash bag was gone. But through the side window, near the curb, I saw it. Set out with the others. That morning, I couldn't stop checking Zillow. Not for escape fantasies or faraway listings in places I'd never afford. Just curiosity. Local homes, nearby streets. I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't have the money. But something in me was restless. An itch under my skin that I couldn't explain away anymore. After lunch, I took a walk. I told Vera I needed fresh air. She didn't look up from her tablet. It had been weeks since I walked the block without rushing somewhere. The neighborhood felt smaller now, like it had shrunk without my permission. Most of the houses looked just as I remembered them. Neatly trimmed lawns, porch flags, wind chimes still spinning in slow motion. But then I saw it. Next door. A wooden post had been hammered into the lawn, slightly crooked. The sign was red and white. For sale, open house this weekend. I stopped walking. It was the old Jensen house, the one with the pale blue shutters, overgrown hydrangeas, and a gate that always squeaked no matter how much you oiled it. I used to play there as a kid. Hide and seek in the backyard, popsicles on the porch. It had been empty for years. But now, I stood at the edge of the sidewalk staring at it, heart thudding. It wasn't just a house. It was next to theirs. Not with them, but visible. Side by side, but separate. The thought planted itself like a seed. That evening, I sat on the back steps as the sun folded into the trees. Vera stood in the garden, clipping dead leaves with the neighbor, Mrs. Renly. They didn't see me sitting quietly by the screen door. They rarely did. "She's just staying temporarily," Vera said, voice light, like this was a weather update. "Callista's the one really building a future. She's got direction, that's the difference." Mrs. Renly hummed her agreement, or at least didn't object. That was the safest thing to do with people like Vera. Nod, smile, avoid the mess. I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. That sentence was a verdict. It wasn't spoken in anger. It was said with certainty, like she was reporting the news, like it was settled. She wasn't clarifying my place. She was erasing it, just softly enough not to be called cruel. That night, I crawled into my corner beneath the stairs and stared at the laptop screen until my eyes burned. I opened a new tab, typed First-Time Homebuyer Resources. Another tab, FHA Loans, Texas. Then, Freelance Design Average Income, and another, How to Estimate Renovation Costs. I read for hours. Then I pulled out a piece of scrap paper from the bottom of my bag and drew a rectangle, added a desk, a window, a bookshelf. Then I drew a small patio and a pool. Not a big one, just enough for one person. Enough to float, breathe. It wasn't for guests. It wasn't for Instagram. It was for me. They'd never give me a seat at their table. I'd accepted that, but I could build one next door. And when I sat down, it would be because I chose the chair, not because someone pulled it out for me. The next morning, while reheating old coffee, my phone buzzed. An alert from Zillow. Price drop, 4278, Magnolia Lane, now listed at $172,900. I stared at it. Then, quietly, I smiled. The price drop buzzed in my pocket all day. I didn't reply to the alert, didn't bookmark the listing, but the numbers sat with me, burned themselves into the back of my mind like a dare I wasn't sure I was allowed to accept. That night, I was reviewing brand sketches for a new client, a florist who wanted to reintroduce her business after 20 years of word of mouth. She was sweet, blunt, and didn't care about hashtags. Just wanted her story to be seen again. While exporting the files, I mindlessly opened Instagram. Big mistake. The screen opened to Callista's story. She was filming a room tour. My old room. From junk room to glam zone, she said, camera panning over white furniture, fairy lights, a wall of Polaroids, none of which included me. We had to totally start from scratch. The energy in here used to be so stale. Vera laughed in the background. It was a mess. We barely saved anything. They didn't just redecorate, they erased, painted over my memory like I'd been a bad stain. I watched the whole video, twice. Her caption sealed it. Choose new era, or glow up. Make space for what matters. Not a single word about who lived there first, about the girl who slept under the stairs while they built this new shrine. I wasn't even angry yet. I was stunned. They made it content. The next night, I opened Instagram again. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped I'd misread it all. Maybe I wanted proof that it wasn't as cruel as it felt. Instead, I saw her post. A black background, white script. Some people are chapters, others are the whole story. Caption: know your role. Some people just fill space. The comments rolled in like confetti. Yes! Say it louder for the ones still hanging around. You're everything, girl. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. But I saved the post. Not because I needed a reminder of what she said, but because someday someone would ask me why I left, and I wanted to show them the answer. I sat with that for a while. Then opened a new file on my computer and began piecing together a mood board for my next client, a landscaping company needing a new brand. But halfway through, I renamed the project, Presence Without Permission. The collage started forming around the edges. A keyhole, a small backyard patio, a woman's silhouette standing in her own doorway, holding nothing but a coffee cup and her own piece. I added the word threshold, then blueprint, then view. At the top, in white sans serif, the person they thought wouldn't fight back is building a view they can't block. I stared at it for a while, hands still on the keyboard, then leaned back and closed my eyes. It wasn't anger anymore. It was strategy. Later that night, I got an email from a new lead. Loved your work for Bloom & Root. I'm launching a small interior brand. Interested in logo and full visual identity. Budget approved. I read the message twice, smiled. They weren't done erasing me, but they no longer controlled the narrative. By sunrise, I had already dressed, packed, and folded the lease draft twice before slipping it into my backpack. The house was still. That particular kind of quiet that didn't feel earned, just imposed. I walked down the hallway with calm I hadn't felt in years. My feet moved without hesitation, and yet my heart held a steady, cool beat. I paused at the side cabinet near the laundry room. That's where I kept everything that mattered: birth certificate, tax forms, and my emergency envelope. It was always locked. Until today. The latch clicked open with no effort. Inside, my files were shuffled. One folder was missing entirely. The envelope was gone. Not moved. Not buried. Gone. I stood there longer than I probably should have, waiting to hear someone explain. But the hallway stayed silent, smug, and still. Vera was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters like it was just another morning. Callista was on the phone, her voice saccharine and loud, something about brand opportunities and targeting Gen Z engagement. Roland sat nearby, flipping through the newspaper like it was still 1995. I walked in and set my hand on the back of a chair. "Did you open my drawer?" I asked. Vera didn't flinch. "It's my house. You don't get to claim corners." Callista laughed like I'd told a joke. "No," I said, voice steady. "I asked a real question." Vera turned to face me then. Her face held that familiar tone, the one she wore during parent-teacher conferences and HOA meetings. Civil, prepared. "You shouldn't leave things lying around if they're that important." It wasn't lying around. It was locked. But facts didn't matter in this house, not if they made anyone else look bad. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked out and shut the door gently behind me. At the diner that evening, I was halfway through my shift when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Financial services. I stepped into the back hallway near the dish pit and answered. Hi, this is Megan with FAFSA Processing. We're following up about your recent application. Looks like your guarantor has been removed. The refinancing can't proceed without a new one in place. My chest went cold. Wait, what? Looks like the parent signature was revoked. You'll need to reapply as an independent. I logged into my account as soon as I got off the call. There it was. Vera's name, gone. A red alert flashing across the screen. Application denied. Below that, in clean blue font, Clarissa Simmons, financially independent, verified. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. They didn't just stop supporting me. They handed the whole playbook to Callista. My mother hadn't just stepped back. She'd switched teams. Back home, I didn't waste time. I walked straight past the kitchen. Didn't wait for a pause in Callista's call. Didn't acknowledge Vera as she loaded the dishwasher. I went to my corner, grabbed my duffel, pulled out the printed lease from my bag. I folded a towel slowly, deliberately. I packed only what was mine. No borrowed chargers, no shared mugs, nothing that could be debated later. I pulled my key off my lanyard and set it on the kitchen table. No one looked up. I didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to end. They had stopped calling it home long before I ever dared to leave. I walked down the front path without hesitation. The porch light flickered behind me like it always did. A glitch no one ever cared to fix. The night air wrapped around me, calm and sure. I didn't turn back. The next morning, Vera opened the fridge to reach for the orange juice. A post-it note stared back at her, stuck squarely in the middle of the carton. In my handwriting, I'm not yours to edit. The morning after I left, I took my coffee out to the porch of the villa, my porch now, and sat barefoot on the top step. The quiet was different here, less choreographed. I didn't have to listen for footsteps or silence my own. I could just exist. The lavender plants I'd placed in recycled pots lined the edge of the walkway, still recovering from their transplant shock. Kind of like me. I finished the last sip and headed out for a client meeting across town. The coffee shop was on Main, 2 blocks from the community center. Familiar. A little too familiar. After our project review, I stood in line for a refill. The barista, someone who had known me since high school, tilted her head when she saw me. "Didn't know you were back in town," she chirped, pushing the lid onto my cup. "Visiting for the week?" I smiled. Polite. Warm enough not to start anything. But something sharp caught behind my ribs. "I never left," I said. She blinked. "Oh, huh. Thought you were out of state or something." I shook my head and walked out. They hadn't just erased me inside the house. They'd rewritten me outside it too. The next Sunday, I heard it from someone in the HOA. Apparently, Vera and Roland had attended one of the monthly brunches, the ones where everyone brought deviled eggs and swapped gossip under the guise of civic pride. The Simmons family still played their part. "She's thriving," Vera had said proudly. "Callista's deep into her pre-law program. She's got real direction." Someone at the table, Mrs. Hensley, I think, had asked, "And my lease?" Vera's tone had shifted, a beat too soft, a touch too rehearsed. "She's exploring. You know how it is with creatives." Roland didn't speak, just poked at his plate, quiet as ever. The person telling me this had looked a little embarrassed just repeating it. I think everyone could feel it, that pause. I nodded. I already knew that silence. I'd lived in it. That pause? It said everything. Later that week, I was out front trimming dead leaves from the lavender when Mr. and Mrs. Ellis walked by. They were older, had been neighbors since we were kids. We'd borrowed sugar from them more times than I could count. They stopped at the edge of the path, looking over the hedges. "Well now," Mrs. Ellis said, "we heard you moved in here. It's really beautiful what you've done." I glanced up, unsure how to take it. Thank you. It's quiet, she added after a moment. But powerful. She didn't mean the decor. She meant me, the house, the statement. They waved and kept walking. I watched them go, then turned back to the plants. That evening, after I showered and folded laundry, I found a small envelope slid under my door. The handwriting on the front was simple, familiar. Inside was a torn sheet of lined paper, the kind Roland always kept in a kitchen drawer for to-do lists and grocery reminders. The note had only one sentence. Your mother doesn't know I wrote this, but I saw what they did. I'm sorry. No name, no signature, just the weight of something that had taken years to come loose. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the paper still open in my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. Not entirely. The next day, I pulled out my old laptop to prep for a client consult. The villa was quiet, the morning light slanting through the blinds, dust catching in the air like it had nowhere better to be. I clicked the power button and waited. The familiar startup tone buzzed, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But when the screen loaded, it wasn't my desktop. No folders, no documents. Just a bland, factory reset home screen like the machine had never belonged to anyone. I opened the file browser, checked every drive. Nothing. My portfolio. My client templates. Gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a system failure. Then I remembered something. Months ago, Callista had borrowed my laptop, said her own was running updates, and she had a last-minute submission for a legal fellowship application. She was frantic, loud, pacing, so I handed it over without a second thought. Now, everything I had ever built inside that drive was erased, not wiped by accident, deleted with intention. I sat back in the chair and let that sit in my chest for a full minute. It wasn't the files. It was the fact that someone looked at my work and decided it was expendable. That afternoon, I went to the grocery store to restock on the essentials. Almond milk, oats, spinach, candles. I'd learned how to shop for solitude. While loading a small bag into the back seat, I heard my name. Malis! I turned. Vera stood by the trunk of her car, chatting with a woman I vaguely recognized from church years ago. A social smiler, the kind who always found a way to ask about your life in front of others. Vera waved me over. Look who's here! I nodded, polite. The woman smiled and asked what I was up to these days. Before I could answer, Vera jumped in. Oh, she's doing some fun artsy stuff. Designing social media logos and such. Creative outlet, you know? It was the way she said fun, like I was coloring at a diner table with crayons and a placemat. I let the pause stretch. Then I met the woman's eyes and said, Actually, I just wrapped a full brand campaign for a regional wellness chain. You'll see my work on the billboards down by Main Street next month. The woman blinked. Vera blinked harder. I didn't stay for the awkward follow-up. That evening, I sat out on my patio with my laptop, logged into my site, and hit Update. I uploaded the latest campaign, rewrote the About section to reflect what I had actually done, not what they thought I did. I didn't need applause. I needed presence. They had written me out of their story. So I started writing my own. That night, I checked Instagram one more time. I know, I shouldn't have, but I did. Callista had posted another selfie, hair curled, blazer sharp. The caption read, When you're the one the family believes in, some people were born to inspire, others to follow. There was no mistaking who that was for. I didn't react. I didn't scroll. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder titled Fuel. Then, I opened a client presentation I'd been prepping and added a new title slide, How to Own the Story Without Saying a Word. The sunrise filtered in slow, golden, and quiet through the back window of the villa. My villa. I poured hot coffee into the chipped ceramic mug Nerida had sent me years ago, back when I still thought birthday cards from her were the only proof I mattered. I didn't dress up, didn't need to. I was home. The curtain over the sink window stayed open that morning, and I didn't close it. Let it face Vera's kitchen. Let it frame her view the way she'd spent so long trying to edit mine. At some point, I felt the familiar weight of her gaze through the blinds. I didn't shift, didn't wave. She blinked and turned away, like she'd seen something she wasn't ready to name. The pool out back was still unfinished. The tiling had just been sealed, but the water hadn't been filled yet. And still, it reflected the sun with a kind of discipline I envied. This piece wasn't gifted. I fought for every inch of it. That afternoon, I was pulling weeds near the lavender bed when I heard the creak of the side fence. Roland stood there, one hand gripping the wood, the other shoved into his pocket. He looked like someone who'd wandered into the wrong memory. "You really did it," he said, barely above the wind. "I did," I replied, not looking up from the soil. He paused, watching me gather dead leaves into a small pile. "Your mom. She doesn't know what to do with it." "She doesn't have to," I said, standing up straight. "I didn't build it for her." He nodded. That kind of nod you give when there's more to say, but not enough courage to say it. We both knew that was his way of admitting he saw it all, that he'd always seen it. But silence was easier than truth in our house. I didn't resent him for it anymore. I just stopped needing anything from it. Back inside, I turned on my laptop in the office, my office, and opened an email draft. A clean line across the top read, "Client, Serenity Wellness." I attached the final brand package, color palette, logos, social templates, mission statement copy, all designed from a place that was entirely mine. I added a quick note. "Dear Nina, please find the final assets attached. Thank you for trusting me with your vision. It was an honor to build it from this new space. Warmly, Milas." Before I hit send, I looked at the wall across from me. On it were pinned prints of my last 3 projects. A photo of me and Nerida from a beach trip 3 summers ago, and her handwritten card, framed in matte black. Proud doesn't begin to cover it. The patio called to me in that soft evening kind of way. I carried my mug out, barefoot, letting the warm wood settle beneath me. The sky was that quiet pink gray just before dusk. My favorite. I sat by the pool, feet just skimming the smooth concrete edge. Then, the sound of a door sliding open. Vera stepped out slowly, a trash bag in one hand. Her shoulders were tense. She moved like someone unsure of her welcome. Her eyes landed on me. We didn't speak. She paused. Then she turned back inside, and I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't move. I didn't shrink. I didn't smirk. I just breathed. The next evening, I was wiping down the kitchen counter when my phone buzzed. I expected a delivery update or a client invoice. Instead, it was a message from Kimberly Saunders, someone I hadn't spoken to since sophomore year. We were never close, mostly just shared study guides and traded glances when teachers asked for volunteers. Her message was short. "Hey, did your mom really post this? It's kind of wild." A YouTube link followed. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. The video was titled, "Raising Women of Value, My Journey as a Mother." There she was. Vera, hairpinned, blazer pressed, eyes locked on the camera like it owed her something. She spoke about values, discipline, how motherhood is a series of strategic investments. She talked about raising daughters who lead. Callista's name came up 6 times. Her LSAT scores, her volunteer work, her potential. I watched the full 22 minutes. My name was never mentioned, not once. Not even a footnote. When the video ended, YouTube queued up a makeup tutorial. I clicked X and shut the laptop without flinching. I didn't rage. I didn't shake. I just stood up, walked to the back door, and opened it. Outside, the pool caught the last traces of twilight. That light blue that almost looks silver if you squint hard enough. I stepped out, barefoot, the concrete still warm from the day. That weekend, I hosted dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled vegetables, a bowl of herbed couscous, and wine in mismatched glasses. Nerida came, wearing her usual linen shirt and bringing a pie I suspected she'd bought instead of baked. Two of my clients came by too, Lauren from the wellness chain and Derek from the florist project. They'd never met each other, but talked like old friends under the string lights I'd stapled across the fence. We didn't toast. We didn't make speeches. But then, as we leaned back in our chairs and the night settled soft around us, Nerida raised her glass and said, "To the kind of strength that doesn't need a witness, but earns one anyway." I didn't cry. I didn't say thank you. I just lifted my glass back, nodded once, and felt full in a way no holiday dinner at Vera's ever managed. Later, when everyone had gone and the candles burned low, I opened my laptop again. This time, I navigated to my site. Clicked "About the Founder," typed slowly. When they gave my room away, they gave me something else, a reason to build what they couldn't take from me. I hit publish. That morning, I woke before the alarm. The house was still, birds just beginning to speak. I pulled on a robe, opened the sliding door, and stepped into the crisp morning. Across the fence, Vera's curtain was open. She was there, her silhouette stiff, eyes locked across the yard. She didn't move. Neither did I. I picked up my towel, walked calmly to the pool, and slid into the water. Not to swim, not to escape. Just to float, steady, still, certain. Some things are built in silence. Some views are only visible when you stop looking back.